The scent of cedar wood and damp earth is the first thing you notice as you step out onto the polished veranda of the Inner Bailey. For months, there has been talk of movement in the north, of alliances shifting like the mountain mists, but here, within the high stone walls of the castle, the air remains still and heavy with the fragrance of the ancient forest. You feel the cool grain of the wood beneath your feet, a smoothness earned from decades of soft footsteps and careful oiling, and you lean your weight against one of the thick support pillars. The wood is cool to the touch, solid and unyielding, much like the massive granite blocks that form the base of this fortress. These stones were dragged from the riverbeds and carved by hand, stacked without mortar in a precise interlocking dance that has already survived earthquakes and storms. And now, it must survive the ambition of men. Beyond the outer walls, the valley stretches out in a patchwork of emerald rice paddies and silver streams, but the view is no longer one of simple pastoral peace. On the far horizon, where the mountains meet the sky, you see them, thin vertical lines of colour, barely moving against the hazy blue. They are the banners of an approaching army, the sashimono of a rival lord whose name has been whispered in hushed tones across the province for years. From this distance, they look almost delicate, like wildflowers swaying in a summer breeze, but you know they represent thousands of marching feet and the cold glint of steel. You adjust the weight of your silk robes, feeling the slight pull of the fabric across your shoulders, a reminder of the quiet dignity you must maintain even as the world outside begins to burn. As you watch the distant movement, you find yourself settling into the quiet rhythm of the castle's life, a sanctuary that feels both eternal and fragile. If you are settling in for the night alongside these ancient walls, you have found a place of rest here at the Slumber Archives. We share new journeys into the deep reaches of history every single day, weaving stories to help you drift into a peaceful sleep. If you find comfort in these tales, please consider subscribing so you never miss a night's narration, and perhaps leave a like to help other weary travellers find their way to us. For now, let us return to the stillness of the Inner Bailey, as the shadows begin to lengthen across the stone. The silence of the afternoon is suddenly broken by a sound that seems to vibrate in your very marrow. It is the low, mournful drone of the horagai, the great conch shell trumpet. The sound starts as a deep growl and rises into a haunting wail that echoes off the curved eaves of the watchtowers and rolls down into the valley below. It is the signal for the closing of the gates. You listen as the call is answered by another shell from the distant western gatehouse, and then another from the high keep. It is not a sound of panic, but one of transition. The castle is drawing a deep breath, pulling its limbs inward and preparing for the long night ahead. You walk toward the edge of the courtyard, your footsteps making a rhythmic hollow sound on the wooden boards. Looking down into the secondary bailey, you see the massive main gates, constructed of heavy oak and reinforced with bands of black iron. They are so large that it takes a dozen men to move them, their muscles straining as they push against the great beams. You hear the slow rhythmic groan of the iron hinges, a heavy metallic protest as the gates begin to swing shut. When they finally meet, the sound is like a clap of thunder muffled by the earth, followed by the sliding of the massive wooden locking bar into its stone socket. The outside world has been cut off. The roads, the villages, and the distant banners are now on the other side of a barrier that has stood for 100 years. Inside the walls, the atmosphere is surprisingly calm. There is no shouting, no frantic running. Instead, there is the steady, purposeful movement of people who have known this day was coming. You observe a group of servants crossing the gravel path, their arms laden with bundles of dried miso and sacks of rice to be stored in the deep granaries. Their movements are practiced and slow, a choreography of preparation that has been passed down through generations. You catch the faint smell of wood smoke as the kitchen fires are stoked, preparing a final hot meal before the strict rationing begins. The smoke curls lazily into the air, grey against the darkening sky, a small sign of domesticity in the heart of a fortress. Near the armory, a group of samurai sit in a circle on the grass, their armour laid out before them like the pieces of a complex puzzle. You watch as one man meticulously wipes a cloth over the lacquered plates of his do, the dark red surface gleaming in the fading light. He works with a slow meditative focus, his hands moving in small circular motions. There is a quiet murmur of conversation between them, punctuated by the occasional soft clink of metal against metal. They are not talking of war or glory. They are discussing the quality of the whetstones or the fit of a silk cord. This quiet focus is contagious, a stillness that settles over you like a heavy cloak, grounding you in the present moment. The castle architecture itself seems to breathe with you. The high, white-plastered walls of the keep rise up toward the stars, their gentle curves designed to deflect projectiles and provide a clear line of sight for the archers. You run your hand along the rough surface of a stone wall, feeling the moss that has grown in the crevices, soft and damp against your palm. These walls are not just defences, they are a home. They have housed your ancestors, sheltered your children, and stood as a silent witness to the passage of time. As the first stars begin to prick through the twilight, you feel the weight of that history pressing gently against you, a reminder that you are part of something much larger than yourself. The light begins to fail, and the lanterns are lit one by one, their soft amber glow reflecting in the polished wood of the corridors. You move back toward the interior of the castle, the air growing cooler as the sun disappears behind the jagged peaks of the mountains. The sound of the wind through the pine trees outside the walls is a distant, rushing whisper, like the sound of the sea. Inside, the only sounds are the soft rustle of silk, the occasional crackle of a torch, and the steady, rhythmic breathing of a fortress at rest. You find a quiet corner near a paper screen, where the light of a single candle casts long, flickering shadows on the floor. There is a profound sense of enclosure here, a feeling of being tucked away in a mountain of stone and timber. The outside world, with its marching armies and shifting loyalties, feels like a dream. In this space there is only the weight of your own body, the coolness of the air, and the steady beat of your heart. You sit down, the tatami mats firm and fragrant beneath you, and let the tension of the day begin to melt away. The gates are closed, the watchmen are at their posts, the castle is ready, and as you close your eyes, you realize that for tonight you are safe within its embrace, protected by the strength of the earth and the quiet resolve of those who stand within it. The silence of the castle is not an empty thing. It is a heavy, deliberate presence, built layer by layer from the very stone and timber that surrounds you. As you lie there, the scent of the cedar beams above you seems to deepen, mingling with the faint, metallic tang of the armour resting in the corner of the room. You realize that your safety is not merely a matter of luck, but a masterpiece of geometry and intent. The walls do not just stand, they watch. They do not just enclose, they defy. To understand the peace you feel now, you must remember the journey you took to reach this inner sanctum, passing through the labyrinthine defences that make this fortress a living puzzle. You recall the way the path beneath your feet didn't simply lead forward, but coiled like a dragon around the hillside. As you walked upward, the incline was steep enough to make your calves ache, a slow, steady burn that reminded you why any attacking infantry would arrive at these heights, breathless and trembling. The road was never straight. It turned sharply, forcing you to expose your right side, your unshielded side, to the high embankments where the defenders waited in silence. The most formidable of these obstacles remains vivid in your mind, the Masugata. You remember passing through the first heavy timber gate, only to find yourself trapped in a square stone-walled courtyard with no immediate way forward. This is the square box, a kill zone designed with a terrifying brilliance. To your left and right, the walls rose up like cliffs of weathered granite, and the only exit was a second gate placed at a sharp right angle to the first. In the heat of a siege, an invader would find themselves stalled here, their momentum shattered, while from the galleries above a rain of arrows and spears would descend from every direction. It is a place where time slows down, where the architecture itself becomes an executioner. Yet for you, the memory of that enclosed space brings a strange sense of comfort. It is a filter, a sieve that ensures only those who belong may pass through to the heart of the mountain. As you trace the grain of the wood on the floor with your fingertips, you think of the white plastered walls that glow so softly in the moonlight. They look like silk from a distance, but beneath that elegant facade lies a grim utility. You have seen the small geometric openings cut into the plaster, the sama. Some are square for the heavy matchlock pieces, others triangular or rectangular for the archers. From the outside they are mere dark spots against the white, but from the inside they are windows of absolute clarity. You imagine a defender standing there, the cool draught from the slit brushing against their cheek, watching the slow progress of the enemy through a frame of thick timber. And then there are the ishi otoshi, the stone drop chutes that jut out from the corners of the towers. You remember looking down through one of these narrow gaps earlier in the day, seeing the sheer drop to the base of the wall. They are designed so that if an enemy were to claw their way to the very foot of the fortress, thinking they had found a blind spot, the defenders could simply drop heavy stones or boiling liquids directly onto their heads. There is no corner of this castle that is not watched, no shadow where a threat can hide. The building itself is an extension of the garrison's will, a physical manifestation of 1,000 eyes that never blink. The deep moats that circle the base of the mountain are another layer of this architectural defiance. Even now, in the stillness of the night, you can almost hear the soft lap of the water against the stone foundations. The moats are wide and deceptively still, their surfaces reflecting the stars like a dark, polished mirror. They are more than just a barrier of water. They are a psychological boundary. To cross them is to commit to a struggle against the very elements. They swallow the sound of the world outside, creating a zone of silence that separates the chaos of the warring provinces from the ordered sanctuary where you now rest. The plaster on the walls is thick, reinforced with rice stalks and clay to resist the fire arrows that might fly through the night air. It is a cooling skin for the massive wooden skeleton of the keep. You feel the immense weight of the stones beneath the floor, the no-zura-zumi style of piling rocks, where boulders are fitted together in their natural shapes, creating a rugged, sloping wall that can withstand the tremors of the earth and the battering of Ra. There is a primal honesty in those stones. They were pulled from the riverbeds and the mountain quarries, and they hold the coldness of the earth within them, grounding the entire structure in the ancient history of the land. You shift your weight on the tatami, feeling the slight give of the woven straw. The air in the room is still, yet it feels alive with the security of these layers. You are not just behind a door. You are at the center of a series of concentric circles, each one designed to frustrate, confuse, and ultimately repel anything that would disturb your sleep. The winding paths, the deceptive gates, the hidden slits in the walls, they are all working in harmony to keep the world at bay. It is a beautiful irony that such violent intent in design can produce such a profound sense of tranquility for those within. As the night deepens, the architectural details of the castle seem to dissolve into the darkness, leaving only the feeling of being held. The high walls are like the arms of a giant, protecting you from the wind and the worries of the era. You think of the craftsmen who spent years shaping these timbers and fitting these stones, their hands calloused and their backs aching, all to ensure that a night like this could be possible. Their labor has become your peace. The fortress is a silent sentinel, a mountain of wood and stone that breathes with you, its rhythm slow and steady, its resolve unshakable. You can feel the coolness of the night air beginning to seep through the gaps in the shutters, but it doesn't chill you. Instead, it serves as a reminder of the barrier that exists between you and the wilderness. Outside, the wind may whistle through the pines and the owls may cry in the forest, but here, inside the heart of the Defiance, there is only the soft sound of your own breathing. The complexity of the Masugata, the lethality of the arrow slits, the height of the walls, they all fade into a single, unified sensation of being home. You are tucked away in the highest reach of the world, a place where the logic of war has been used to create a temple of rest. And as the weight of your eyelids finally becomes too much to resist, you surrender to the safety of the stone, knowing that the castle will keep its watch until the first light of dawn touches the white plaster of the topmost tower. The scent of wood smoke is the first thing to greet you as the morning mist begins to pull away from the heavy timber eaves, a scent that clings to your hair and the thick fabric of your robes like a familiar shadow. It is a smell that signifies survival, drifting up from the great stone courtyard where the communal cooking fires have been burning since well before the first hint of grey touched the sky. You find yourself walking toward the centre of the enclosure, your feet finding comfort in the rhythmic crunch of gravel and the occasional smooth surface of a paving stone. There is a quiet, industrious hum to the air here, a collective vibration of hundreds of souls moving in a shared, measured pace. You watch as the quartermasters begin the morning distribution, their movements precise and practiced as they measure out the rice rations. The white grains flow like water into wooden bowls, a sight that brings a strange sense of peace. In a world of uncertainty, the simple weight of a full bowl in your hands is a grounding reality. You find a spot near one of the large iron cauldrons, feeling the radiating heat seep into your bones, chasing away the damp chill of the mountain air. The steam rises in thick white plumes, carrying the earthy aroma of simmering radish and miso, and for a moment the sounds of the distant siege seem to soften, muffled by the domestic intimacy of the morning meal. As you sit, your back resting against a stack of supply crates, you observe the Ashigaru foot soldiers gathered in the periphery of the firelight. These are the men who form the backbone of the castle's defence, and even in this hour of rest, their hands are rarely still. You watch a soldier near you, his face etched with the exhaustion of a night watch, as he pulls a whetstone from a small leather pouch. With slow, deliberate strokes, he begins to sharpen the blade of his naginata. The sound is rhythmic and hypnotic, a steady, metallic shing, shing, shing that underscores the morning quiet. There is a meditative quality to his focus, the way he checks the edge with his thumb, his eyes narrowed in concentration. Around him, others are tending to their gear with the same quiet intensity, tightening the silk cords of their lacquered breastplates, or smoothing the feathers on a fresh clutch of arrows. You realize that this maintenance is more than just preparation for battle. It is a ritual of control, a way to find order in a chaotic world by ensuring that every hinge, every blade, and every strap is exactly as it should be. The weight of your own responsibilities feels slightly lighter as you witness this shared dedication, a silent promise kept between men and their tools. Meanwhile, the movement of the non-combatants creates a secondary pulse within the inner walls, a fluid and vital energy that keeps the heart of the fortress beating. You see the women of the household moving with a quiet, purposeful grace, their sleeves tucked back with tasuki cords as they manage the staggering logistics of a life under pressure. They are the architects of the castle's endurance, overseeing the granaries and ensuring that the water levels in the stone cisterns remain high. You follow the path of a group carrying bundles of clean white cloth and ceramic jars filled with medicinal salves, heading toward the temporary infirmary set up in one of the lower barracks. Their presence is a calming balm in itself. They move without the frantic energy of fear, their voices low and steady as they offer comfort to the wounded. You notice how they pause to adjust a bandage or offer a sip of water, their hands steady and sure. It occurs to you that while the men provide the shield and the sword, it is these individuals who provide the spirit, weaving the fractured pieces of a community back together with every small act of care and every calculated measure of grain. As the sun climbs higher, casting long, sharp shadows across the white plaster walls, you find yourself drifting toward the more secluded gardens of the inner sanctum. Here the air feels different, thinner perhaps, and certainly quieter, buffered by the thick stone of the keep. You come across a small group of high-ranking samurai seated on a wooden veranda that overlooks a dry stone garden. They are not discussing tactics or the movements of the enemy across the valley. Instead, they are immersed in a moment of profound, shared stillness. One of them holds a brush, poised over a narrow strip of paper, his eyes fixed on the way the light catches the moss on a nearby rock. You stand at a distance, unwilling to break the spell, as he finally lowers the brush to write a few characters of poetry. It is a haiku, perhaps, capturing the fleeting beauty of a dewdrop or the resilience of a pine tree clinging to a cliffside. In this space, the brutality of the siege is acknowledged not through steel, but through the appreciation of what is fragile. You watch as they pass a bowl of tea between them, the steam rising to meet the cool air, a quiet defiance against the darkness beyond the gates. This is the duality of your life here, the sharp-edged reality of the naginata and the soft, ink-stained contemplation of the poem. Both are necessary. Both are what make you human in a time of iron. The morning progresses with a slow, grinding inevitability, and you find yourself helping to move heavy sacks of salt from the lower storehouses to the kitchens. The physical labor is a welcome distraction, the rough hemp of the bags scratching against your shoulder, the muscles in your lower back beginning to hum with a dull, honest ache. You feel the sweat begin to prickle at your hairline, a sensation that makes you feel intensely alive. As you work, you listen to the sounds of the castle around you, the distant call of a sentry, the rhythmic thud of a carpenter's hammer repairing a damaged gate, the soft lowing of a pack horse in the stables. These sounds form a tapestry of survival, a reminder that a siege is not just a series of battles, but a long, slow exercise in patience and maintenance. You stop for a moment to wipe your brow, looking up at the towering height of the main keep, its multiple roofs stacked like the wings of a great bird. It feels immovable, a mountain of wood and stone that has absorbed the history of your people and now stands as the final guardian of your future. Eventually, the midday heat begins to settle over the courtyard, and the pace of activity slows as people seek the shade of the overhanging eaves. You find a quiet corner near a stone well, the air here a few degrees cooler and smelling of damp earth and moss. You sit on the edge of the well, letting your legs dangle, and close your eyes for a moment. The internal landscape of the castle is a world unto itself, a microcosm of society compressed into a few acres of fortified ground. You think about the rice you ate this morning, grown in fields you can no longer see, and the water you are drinking, drawn from deep beneath the very mountain that supports you. There is a profound sense of interconnectedness in this life. Every person you have passed today, from the highest lord to the youngest servant, is bound to you by the same walls and the same singular goal. The quiet moments of meditation you witnessed earlier seem to linger in your mind, reminding you that even when the world is narrowed down to the space within a fortress, the mind remains vast and free. You take a deep breath, feeling the air fill your lungs, and as you exhale, you let go of the tension in your shoulders, surrendering to the slow, steady rhythm of the day. The castle watches, the fires burn low, and for now, in this small pocket of time, there is only the peace of being exactly where you are meant to be. The stillness of the evening is not broken by a single shout, but rather by a vibration that begins in the soles of your feet, travelling up through the heavy timber floorboards of the watchtower. It is a low, rhythmic thud, a persistent drumming against the outer wooden palisades that guard the lower slopes of the mountain. You lean your weight against a sturdy cedar pillar, feeling the ancient wood press against your shoulder, and you realize that the siege has truly begun. The sound is hypnotic in its repetition, the heavy swinging weight of a battering ram meeting the resistance of sharpened logs and packed earth. With each impact, a small cloud of dust shakes loose from the rafters above you, drifting down like grey snow through the dim light, settling silently onto the fabric of your sleeves. High above the rhythmic pounding, a new sound cuts through the air. A long, mournful whistle that seems to bleed out of the darkening sky. These are the Kabura Ya, the signal arrows, with their hollow, carved heads that sing as they fly. To your ears, the sound is like a flute played by the wind, rising and falling in pitch as the projectiles arch over the stone ramparts. You watch one trace a slow, elegant curve against the deep indigo of the twilight, a streak of movement that signals the coordination of 10,000 souls moving in the valley below. There is no haste in your movements as you watch them fall. There is only a quiet, observant presence. You find yourself noticing the way the whistle of the arrow fades just before it strikes, leaving a brief moment of absolute silence before the soft thud of its impact. As you turn your gaze toward the lower breastworks, a heavy, acrid scent begins to drift upward, weaving through the familiar smell of pine needles and damp earth. It is the sharp, sulphurous bite of black powder. Below you, the first of the Tanegashima matchlock rifles are being brought to bear. You see the tiny glowing embers of the slow-burning matches, small orange stars dancing in the dark as the ash-laden wind catches them. Then comes the sharp crack of the discharge, a sound much more immediate and jagged than the singing arrows. The smoke rises in thick, pale plumes, clinging to the mossy stones of the foundation, smelling of saltpeter and charcoal. It is a scent that lingers in the back of your throat, a dry and dusty reminder of the changing world outside these walls. Yet here, held within the embrace of the fortress, you remain grounded and still. You watch as the defenders on the lower walls begin to respond, their movements fluid and practiced, honed by years of discipline. They reach for the Tate, the massive rectangular wooden shields that stand like silent sentinels along the parapets. You can almost feel the weight of the thick oak in your own hands, the rough grain of the wood, the cold iron hinges that allow the shields to stand upright on their own legs. As the arrows and lead balls begin to hiss through the air, the soldiers crouch behind these wooden walls, and you hear the sharp, rhythmic clatter of projectiles striking the timber. It sounds like heavy rain falling on a summer roof, a chaotic but strangely soothing percussion that reinforces the feeling of being protected, of being tucked away in a safe interior space while the elements roar outside. The Tate are painted with the bold, simple crests of the house, swirling patterns and geometric shapes that seem to pulse in the flickering light of the torches. You find your eyes tracing the lines of a single crest, following the curve of a painted petal or the sharp angle of a mountain peak, letting the repetitive geometry quiet your mind. There is a profound sense of craftsmanship in these shields, the way the wood has been planed, the way the leather straps are bound. Even in the heat of the first assault, there is a deep underlying order to everything you see. The chaos is merely a surface ripple on a very deep and very still pond. You adjust your posture, feeling the slight ache in your lower back soften as you shift your weight. The air is cooling rapidly now, and the silk of your undergarments feels cool against your skin, while the heavier outer layers of your robes provide a comforting warmth. You realize that you are not afraid, for fear requires a wandering mind, and your mind is anchored entirely in the present moment. In the smell of the smoke, the sound of the singing arrows, and the steady, heartbeat-like thud of the ram against the outer gates. The evening continues to deepen into a true night, and the fires in the valley floor begin to multiply, looking like a carpet of fallen stars stretched across the dark earth. From your high vantage point, the scale of the siege feels distant and small, as if you are looking down at a game played with lacquer pieces on a board. You take a slow, deep breath, drawing in the cooling night air, and as you exhale, you feel your heartbeat slowing to match the rhythm of the castle itself. The stone beneath your feet is solid and unyielding. It has stood for generations and will stand for many more. You are a part of this endurance, a single thread in a vast, woven tapestry of history and shadow. As the first wave of the assault begins to taper off into a wary standoff, the sounds change once more. The whistling arrows cease their flight, and the heavy thudding of the ram grows intermittent, eventually falling silent as the attackers pull back into the gloom to regroup. The sudden absence of the noise is like a heavy blanket being draped over the world. The only sound that remains is the crackle of the braziers along the walkway and the distant, muffled calls of the captains checking their lines. You lean back against the cool stone wall, closing your eyes for a moment, letting the sensory details of the last hour wash over you, and then drift away, leaving only a sense of profound, quiet readiness. The night is long, and the siege is only beginning, but within the walls of your mind there is a sanctuary that no arrow can reach, and no fire can touch. You reside in the center of the storm, in that small, silent space where the breath moves in and out, and the soul finds its rest. The castle watches, the mountains wait, and you remain, steady, peaceful, and whole. The weight of your armor has become a part of your own body, a heavy, lacquered second skin that holds you upright as you lean against the cold timber of the watchtower. The moonlight spills over the landscape like a wash of pale ink, turning the world beyond the moat into a study of silver and shadow. You can feel the rough grain of the wooden railing beneath your palms, and the chill of the night air bites at your cheeks, carrying the faint, lingering scent of pine needles and damp earth. Out there in the darkness, the enemy camps are marked by the orange flicker of 1,000 small fires, looking like fallen stars scattered across the valley floor. But here, on the ramparts, the primary sensation is one of immense, heavy stillness. A silence so deep that you can hear the rhythmic creaking of your own breastplate as you breathe. Your eyes track the silver line of the moat, watching for the slightest ripple that shouldn't be there. You are not just looking for an army. You are listening for the impossible. Deep beneath your feet, the earth holds secrets. You press the side of your head against a wooden post, or perhaps you kneel for a moment to place an ear against the packed soil of the inner embankment, straining to catch the rhythmic thud, thud, thud of a sapper's pick. There are whispers among the men of the shinobi, those shadows who move without sound and breathe beneath the water through hollow reeds. You listen for the scrape of a grappling hook against stone, or the muffled splash of a body slipping into the dark water. Every rustle of the wind through the dry grass feels like a footstep, and every owl's cry sounds like a signal passed between scouts in the brush. It is a slow, meditative vigil, where your senses are stretched thin across the darkness, vibrating like the string of a koto. As the weeks of the siege have stretched into a second month, the castle has begun to feel like a living thing that is slowly being parched by the sun. You feel the dry stickiness in your throat, a constant reminder that the fresh springs feeding the inner courtyard have slowed to a mere trickle. The wells are guarded now, and every drop of water is treated with the reverence usually reserved for a sacred relic. You remember the way the water used to gush freely, cold and sweet, but now you find yourself practicing the art of conservation in every small movement. When you wash your face, you use only a damp cloth, pressing the moisture into your skin to savor the coolness without wasting a single splash. The defenders have become masters of ingenuity, gathering the morning dew from the broad leaves of the garden plants, or tilting wooden shutters to catch the rare, fleeting drizzle of a passing cloud. Even the horses are rationed, their quiet nickering in the stables below sounding like a plea that everyone feels but no one speaks aloud. There is a strange, quiet dignity in this shared deprivation. You watch a fellow samurai across the courtyard as he carefully cleans his blade with a handful of dry sand rather than wasting precious liquid, his movements slow and deliberate. Hunger is a dull ache, a companion that sits low in your belly, but the thirst is more persistent, a sharp edge that keeps you focused and strangely alert. You find that you no longer crave the grand feasts of the harvest season. Instead, your mind dwells on the simple perfection of a single, cold plum, or the sound of a mountain stream tumbling over moss-covered rocks. This focus on the essential has stripped away the noise of your previous life, leaving only the immediate reality of the stone beneath your feet and the weight of the spear in your hand. But the enemy knows that the mind is as much a battlefield as the walls themselves. From across the moat, through the veil of the midnight mist, the music begins. It starts with the low, guttural thrum of a drum, a slow, rhythmic beat that seems to sync with the pulsing of your own blood. Then comes the flute, a high, mournful wail that drifts over the battlements like a ghost. The melody is hauntingly beautiful, a song of home, of families waiting by hearths, and of the peaceful life that exists just a few hundred yards away, yet remains utterly out of reach. It is a psychological weight, intended to make your resolve crumble under the pressure of longing. The enemy plays these songs not to celebrate, but to remind you of everything you are missing, to make the cold stone of the castle feel like a prison rather than a fortress. You stand there, wrapped in your heavy wool cloak, and you let the music wash over you without letting it take hold. You observe the sadness it evokes as if it were a cloud passing over the moon, visible and real, but ultimately fleeting. You find a strange comfort in the sound. It proves that life still exists outside these walls, and that the world is still capable of beauty, even if that beauty is being used as a weapon. You focus on the physical sensations of the moment to anchor yourself, the scratchy texture of the wool against your neck, the way the cold air feels in your lungs, and the solid, unyielding strength of the timber beams. The music rises and falls, echoing off the high stone walls, and you simply breathe through it, a silent sentinel in a world of shadows and sound. The night deepens, and the moon climbs to its zenith, casting long, sharp shadows across the inner ward. You move along the walkway with a slow, measured gait, your footsteps muffled by the soft leather of your tarby boots. Every few minutes, you pause to look inward, toward the heart of the castle. You see the dim glow of a single lantern in the Lord's quarters, a reminder that the hierarchy of this world remains intact, even in the face of ruin. The hierarchy provides a sense of order that is deeply soothing. Everyone has their place, their duty, and their purpose. Your purpose is the watch. Your purpose is the silence. As the hours crawl toward the dawn, the psychological pressure of the siege begins to manifest in the way the mind wanders. You find yourself imagining the tunnels being dug deep below, picturing the men in the dark earth, their breath hot and heavy as they move closer to the foundations. You imagine the moment the earth might give way, but you do not meet this thought with fear. Instead, you meet it with a quiet, analytical curiosity. You have prepared for this. The large ceramic jars filled with water have been placed at intervals along the base of the walls. You check them periodically, looking for the tiny ripples on the surface that would betray the vibrations of digging nearby. The water in the jars is still, a perfect glassy mirror reflecting the stars. The enemy's drums stop as abruptly as they began, leaving a silence that feels heavier than the noise. It is in this sudden vacuum of sound that the true test begins. Without the music to distract you, the mind tries to fill the void with its own anxieties. But you have learned the art of the inner fortress. You pull your awareness back to the center of your chest, to the slow rise and fall of your ribs. You are the mountain. You are the stone. The siege may last days, weeks, or months, but in this singular moment of the midnight watch, you are perfectly, entirely present. The air grows even colder as the first hint of grey begins to touch the eastern horizon, a sign that the longest part of the night is behind you. Your joints ache with the cold, and your eyes are weary from the constant scanning of the dark. But there is a profound sense of accomplishment in having held the line through another darkness. You have guarded the sleep of those within the inner keep, and you have remained a steady point of light in a world of encroaching shadows. As the mist begins to rise from the moat, swirling in the pre-dawn light, you take one last long breath of the night air, letting the stillness of the castle settle into your bones, preparing you for the day that is yet to come. The sudden, heavy thud of a falling beam vibrates through the soles of your feet, a deep resonance that seems to travel up through the stone floor and into your very marrow. It is a sound that signals the end of a long, grueling watch, as the secondary gate, the one you had reinforced with your own hands just days ago, finally yields to the relentless pressure of the ram. You do not panic. Rather, there is a strange, quiet clarity that settles over you, a sharpening of the senses as the world narrows down to the immediate task at hand. Your breath comes slow and steady, misting in the cool air of the courtyard as you begin the practiced retreat toward the inner sanctum of the fortress. The weight of your armor, once a burden, now feels like a familiar embrace, a shell of lacquered iron and silk cords that keeps the chaos of the world at bay. You move with a deliberate, measured pace, your tabby-clad feet finding purchase on the uneven stones, even as the distant shouting of the encroaching vanguard grows louder behind you. The transition from the open courtyard to the claustrophobic confines of the inner walls is a stark one. As you step into the shadow of the great stone base, the temperature drops and the air grows thick with the scent of damp earth and old cedar. This is the heart of the defense, a labyrinth of narrow corridors and steep, ladder-like stairs designed specifically to slow an intruder to a crawl. You feel the rough texture of the plastered walls against your shoulder as you navigate a sharp 90-degree turn, a crank in the hallway that forces any attacker to expose their unshielded side. Here, the architecture itself is a weapon. You pause for a moment in the dim light, listening to the echoing footsteps of your companions as they move in synchronized harmony, retreating upward, always upward, toward the towering silhouette of the Tenshu, the main keep that rises like a silent guardian against the greying sky. In these tight spaces, the long spears of the open field are useless, and you feel your hand instinctively move to the hilt of your shorter blade. The air is heavy with the metallic tang of iron and the faint, sweet smell of incense drifting from a small shrine tucked into a wall niche. It is a reminder of the quiet lives that were lived here before the storm arrived. You find yourself at a bottleneck, a doorway so narrow that only one person can pass through at a time. As you wait for the man ahead of you to ascend the steep wooden steps, you notice the fine grain of the timber, polished by the hands of countless soldiers over decades of peace. There is a profound sense of history in this wood, a silent witness to the generations who have stood exactly where you are standing now, feeling the same quickening of the heart and the same cool breeze pulling through the arrow slits. The enemy is closer now, their presence announced by the rhythmic clanking of gear and the harsh commands of their captains. In response, a signal is given, and the air is suddenly filled with a different kind of darkness, thick Acrid smoke begins to billow from damp straw and green wood, set alight in iron braziers near the entrances. It is a desperate measure, a way to blind and choke those who would dare to enter, but for you it is a familiar veil. You pull a damp cloth over your nose and mouth, the fabric smelling of vinegar and salt, and continue your ascent. The smoke curls around the rafters like a living thing, softening the edges of the world and turning the flickering torchlight into a series of golden ghosts. You move through this haze with a ghostly grace, your movements slowed by the density of the air, feeling the heat of the smouldering fires against your shins as you step over the hearths. Every floor of the keep is a new layer of defense, a new opportunity to pause and breathe. You reach a landing where the floorboards have been intentionally left loose, the nightingale floors that chirp and sing under the slightest pressure. Even in the heat of a siege, the sound is delicate, a strange contrast to the violence unfolding below. You find a moment of stillness here, leaning your back against a massive central pillar made from a single ancient hemlock tree. You can feel the vibration of the entire building, the groaning of the heavy timbers as they settle, the distant thuds of projectiles hitting the outer masonry, and the low hum of the wind whistling through the high gables. It is as if the castle itself is breathing, a great, slumbering beast that is slowly drawing its limbs inward for the final encounter. As you reach the upper levels, the sound of the world outside begins to fade, replaced by the hushed intensity of the final few defenders. There is no more room to run, and the realization brings with it a profound sense of peace. You watch as two of your comrades grip the handles of the massive iron-bound doors that lead to the inner sanctum. These doors are works of art as much as they are barriers, thick slabs of aged oak reinforced with heavy studs that have been blackened by time. With a low guttural groan of wood on wood, the doors begin to swing shut. You step through the narrowing gap, feeling the sudden change in air pressure as the vast interior of the keep swallows you whole. The sound of the bolts being slid into place is the finality of the day. It is a heavy, metallic clack that echoes up into the darkness of the high rafters, a sound that says the world outside no longer exists. You are now in a space defined by shadow and the soft glow of a few remaining lanterns. The air here is still, undisturbed by the wind or the smoke, and it carries the faint aroma of tatami straw and beeswax. You find a spot to sit, the floorboards cool beneath you, and you slowly begin to undo the fastenings of your helmet. The relief of the weight leaving your head is almost overwhelming, a physical manifestation of the transition from the chaos of the breach to the quietude of the final stand. You look around at the faces of the others, illuminated by the low light. There is no fear there, only a weary acceptance and a deep, shared bond that transcends words. You reach for a water skin, the liquid cool and tasting faintly of the earth, and let a small trickle run down your parched throat. The ache in your back and shoulders begins to throb in a slow, rhythmic pulse, a reminder that you are still alive, still breathing, still a part of this ancient stone and wood. Outside, the sun may be setting or rising. It is impossible to tell within these thick walls, but here time has slowed to a crawl. You run your fingers over the silk wrap of your sword handle, feeling the intricate weave, and you realize that every moment leading up to this has been a preparation for this specific stillness. The heavy timber doors stand as a silent testament to your survival thus far. They are the final boundary between the known and the unknown, the last shield against the tide. As you settle into your seat, leaning your head back against the cool plaster, you listen to the silence of the keep. It is not an empty silence, but one filled with the presence of the mountain, the strength of the forest, and the enduring spirit of those who built this place to last for 1,000 years. You close your eyes for a moment, letting the darkness of the room merge with the darkness behind your lids, finding a strange, profound comfort in the weight of the history that surrounds you. The siege continues, but for now, within these bolted doors,
There is only the slow, steady rhythm of your own heart, and the quiet knowledge that you have held your ground.
The silence that follows the long weeks of thunderous cannon fire and the rhythmic drumming of marching feet is almost heavier than the noise itself. You wake not to the sound of an alarm, but to the absence of one, a stillness so profound that you can hear the settling of the castle's ancient timbers and the soft, rhythmic rasp of your own breath against the chilly morning air. As you step out onto the wooden veranda, the morning mist clings to the high stone walls like a damp silk shroud, blurring the edges of the world. Through the grey haze, a single figure emerges from the enemy lines, walking with a slow, deliberate gait toward the main gate. He carries no weapon, only a long pole topped with a white banner that snaps softly in the breeze. This is the messenger, the bearer of terms, and his arrival signals that the brutal mathematics of the siege have finally reached their conclusion. You feel the rough grain of the railing beneath your palms, the wood weathered by seasons of rain and sun, and you realize that your hands are no longer shaking. There is a strange, hollow calm in your chest as you watch the parley begin. In this world, the end of a conflict is governed by a code as intricate and demanding as the tea ceremony, a series of rituals rooted in the concept of Bushido that ensure even in defeat there is a path to preserved honor. The negotiations are not merely about territory or gold, they are a delicate dance of status and sacrifice. You watch from a distance as the high-ranking commanders meet in the space between the inner and outer moats, their silk surcoats, vivid splashes of colour against the scorched earth. There is no shouting, no displays of anger. Instead, there is a chillingly polite exchange of bows, a recognition of the shared burden of the warrior's path. The terms are whispered through the ranks of the garrison like wind through dry grass, to ensure the safety of the common soldiers and the servants who have huddled in the damp cellars for months. A price must be paid. Sometimes it is the life of a lord, offering his own ritual suicide to spare his men. Other times it is an exchange of hostages, a practice that weaves the fates of the two warring houses together. You feel the weight of this collective breath being held. You think of the young pages and the sons of the high-ranking families who might soon be sent into the enemy camp as living guarantees of the peace. It is a heavy, sombre burden, yet there is a quiet relief that the sword point has been lowered from the throat of the castle. As the afternoon light begins to filter through the thinning clouds, the exchange of gifts begins, a gesture intended to smooth over the jagged edges of the past weeks. You assist in bringing forth crates from the deep storehouses, not of grain or salt this time, but of fine lacquerware, rolls of indigo-dyed silk, and blades forged by masters whose names are spoken with reverence. The physical act of carrying these items, feeling the cool smoothness of the lacquer and the substantial weight of the steel, grounds you in the reality of the moment. These objects are more than wealth. They are tokens of sincerity, bridges built across a chasm of blood and fire. You notice the way the enemy officers receive these gifts, their faces unreadable, yet their posture reflecting a mutual exhaustion that transcends the labels of victor and vanquished. The atmosphere within the walls shifts from the jagged tension of survival to a low, humming melancholy. You walk through the inner courtyard, passing men who are cleaning their armor for what might be the last time in this campaign. The smell of wood smoke is different today. It is no longer the scent of fires fought in the heat of battle, but the comforting aroma of a hearth being tended. You see a group of Ashigaru sitting by a well, their heads bowed as they share a ladle of clear water, their faces etched with lines of fatigue that seem to have deepened overnight. There is no cheering, no boisterous celebration of survival. Instead, there is a profound shared recognition of what has been lost and what has been endured. The lifting of the siege feels less like a victory and more like the end of a long, feverish dream. You find yourself drawn back to the high ramparts, looking out over the landscape that has been your entire world for so long. The enemy tents are being struck, the great colourful banners folded away into wooden chests. The earth is scarred and blackened, yet you know that beneath the ash the seeds of the coming spring are waiting. The physical toll on your body, the ache in your lower back from sleeping on hard floors, the persistent chill in your bones, the hollowness in your stomach, begins to soften. You wrap your cloak more tightly around your shoulders, the heavy wool providing a sense of enclosure and protection that the stone walls no longer need to provide. The transition from war to peace is a slow, methodical process. You watch as the great gates, which have been bolted and barred for what felt like an eternity, are slowly swung open. The sound of the iron hinges groaning is like a great beast waking from a slumber. For the first time in months, the air from the outside world rushes in, carrying the scent of pine needles and damp earth from the valley floor. It is a sensory revelation, a reminder that the world beyond the siege has continued to turn, indifferent to the struggles within. You stand in the gateway, the threshold between the fortress and the horizon, and feel the sudden, vast openness of the sky. In the coming days, the garrison will begin to disperse. Some will return to small farms in the provinces, their hands trading the spear for the plough. Others will remain to rebuild the shattered battlements, their lives forever entwined with the history of these stones. But for now, in this suspended moment of negotiated peace, there is only the quiet. You listen to the distant call of a bird, a sharp, clear sound that cuts through the stillness, and you realize that the constant, low-level hum of fear that has lived in the back of your mind has finally faded away. It is replaced by a deep contemplative stillness, a readiness to let the weight of the past weeks settle into the earth. As the sun begins to dip lower, casting long golden shadows across the courtyard, you find a quiet corner near the granary where the stone is still warm from the day's pale light. You sit, letting your muscles finally go slack, feeling the solid earth beneath you. The complexities of honor, the intricate demands of the code, and the harsh realities of the siege all seem to melt into a single simple truth. You are here, and the air is still. The relief is not an explosion of joy, but a slow, steady tide that washes over you, cooling the fires of the past and smoothing the jagged edges of your memory. You close your eyes, and for the first time in a long time, the darkness behind your eyelids is not a place of vigilance, but a sanctuary of rest. The siege is over, the terms are met, and the long, quiet walk toward tomorrow has finally begun. The heavy iron-studded timber of the inner gates groans as it is pushed back, a sound that once signaled the frantic movement of troops, but now serves only as a low, rhythmic welcome to the new day. You step forward, your straw sandals pressing into the damp earth, feeling the slight resistance of the mud and the grit of charcoal beneath your feet. The air outside the keep is different than the air within. It is no longer thick with the scent of pine soot torches and the metallic tang of sharpened steel. Instead, it is cool and sharp, carrying the fragrance of the cedar forests that cling to the surrounding slopes and the faint, sweet smell of damp moss. As you pass through the charred remains of the outer gatehouse, you see the blackened wood where the fire had licked the beams, now extinguished and cold. The charcoal crumbles at the touch of your sleeve, leaving a grey smear on the fabric, a small mark of the ordeal that has passed. You do not brush it away. It is a part of the morning now, just as the mist is a part of the valley below. The landscape that stretches out before you is returning to its natural, quiet state. The vast encampment that had ringed the castle for weeks, the thousands of silk banners, the smoke from 100 cooking fires, the constant low hum of a resting army, has begun to dissolve like salt in water. Where there were once rows of tents and the glint of spear tips, there is now only the tall grass, flattened in places, but already beginning to straighten itself toward the light. The birds, which had fled the noise of the siege engines and the shouting of men, have returned. You can hear the distant, repetitive call of a cuckoo from the deep woods, a sound so ordinary and so persistent that it makes the violence of the past month feel like a half-remembered dream. You stop for a moment, leaning your weight against a stone wall that has stood for 300 years. The stone is cold, drawing the heat from your palm, and you find comfort in its absolute stillness. You think of the men who hauled these boulders up the mountainside generations ago, their hands rough and their backs aching, just as yours does now. They built this place to endure, and though the gates are scorched and the granaries are empty, the mountain itself remains unchanged. The resilience of the castle is not just in its stone walls or its cleverly designed kill zones, but in the quiet endurance of those who defended it. You think of the faces of the others you saw in the dim light of the storehouses, the exhaustion etched into the lines around their eyes, the way they shared the last of the dried radish and rice without a word. There is a profound dignity in that shared survival, a bond forged not by the heat of battle, but by the slow, cold patience of waiting for the end. The spirit of this place is woven from those small moments of humanity, a hand placed on a shoulder in the dark, a quiet prayer whispered over a bowl of water, the steady breath of a comrade sleeping in the shadow of the ramparts. You look back at the keep, its white-plastered walls glowing softly in the early light. It looks fragile from this distance, a paper lantern perched upon a rock, and yet it has held. It has been a shell for your lives, a sanctuary that demanded everything and gave back only the chance to see another dawn. As you walk further down the winding path, away from the high walls and toward the valley floor, a sense of deep, meditative calm settles over you. The world feels immense and your place within it feels very small. Yet this smallness is not a burden. It is a release. You realize that power is like the morning mist that clings to the river. It is thick and imposing at dawn, obscuring the path and chilling the bone, but it cannot withstand the rising sun. It shifts, it drifts, and eventually it vanishes, leaving the earth exactly as it was before. The great lords and their ambitions, the banners and the territories, they are the weather of history, swirling and tempestuous, but ultimately transient. What endures is the spirit that moves through the world, the quiet persistence of the farmer returning to his field, the monk striking the temple bell, and the survivor walking out into the morning light. Your footsteps are slow and deliberate, matching the rhythm of your heart, which has finally found its steady, resting pace. The sun climbs higher, and the last of the shadows retreat into the crevices of the rocks. You feel the warmth on your neck, a gentle weight that replaces the heavy burden of your armor. Your muscles, long knotted with the tension of the watch, begin to loosen, and the ache in your joints becomes a dull, fading hum. You are moving toward a world that is rebuilding itself, where the sound of a hammer will mean the repair of a roof rather than the bracing of a gate. You find yourself focusing on the smallest sensations, the way the light catches the dew on a spider's web, the sound of your own breathing, the feeling of the wind moving through your hair. These are the things that matter now. The siege was a storm, and you are the earth that remains after the rain has stopped. There is no need to hurry, no need to look back with anything other than a quiet, solemn gratitude. The path ahead is clear, winding through the trees and disappearing into the soft green of the valley. As you continue your descent, the castle behind you begins to blend into the grey of the mountain peaks, its sharp outlines softened by the distance. It is no longer a fortress of war, but a monument to time itself. You think of the transience of all things, the beauty of the cherry blossom that falls at its peak, the moon that wanes even as it reaches fullness. To have survived is to have witnessed the turning of a great wheel, and as you find a flat stone by a mountain stream, you sit for a moment to rest. The water rushes over the pebbles, clear and cold, singing a song that has no beginning and no end. You dip your hands into the flow, the water numbing your skin, washing away the last traces of the ash and the dust. You are tired, a deep, soul-reaching fatigue that invites you to simply be still. The world is at peace, and for this moment, so are you. The morning light is wide and golden, stretching out across the land, promising nothing more than the simple, profound reality of the present. You close your eyes, listening to the water and the wind, and let the memory of the siege drift away like smoke into the vast blue sky. The long night has ended, and the quiet of the morning is your reward. You breathe in, slow and deep, and let the stillness carry you into a dreamless, well-earned rest.